I'm Molly Kimball. Welcome to Fueled, a wellness and nutrition podcast. I'm a registered dietitian and nutrition journalist with a passion to help people live their strongest, healthiest life possible. In my weekly TV segments and columns, there's a limited amount of time and space to cover everything, but there's so much more to share. This podcast is my opportunity to dive deeper into the topics you want to know about. So today's episode is about the Alcohol Free for 40 challenge and specifically the midpoint. And I have two very special guests with me who have been doing this Alcohol Free for 40 journey with us. I think y'all are going to really enjoy hearing their experiences, their feedback. And as we're calling this particular podcast episode, we're halfway there. So Ashley and Melanie, I want to welcome y'all. Thanks for spending the time with me here. And Melanie Warner Spencer is managing editor of Louisiana Life magazine. Ashley McLellen is managing editor of New Orleans magazine. And you two have been blogging about this as well.
Yes.
We have.
Yes. And it's really helped, I think, keep me going. I don't know about you, Melanie, but it's really been rewarding to kind of document it.
It has been. And I also like that it not just keeps us on track, but also it allows us to have an excuse to experiment with a lot of different zero proof cocktails or mocktails, if you will, that are out there on the market, and also making them at home and really delve into it like a couple of journalists would, and scouring the city for places where it might be easier to score something like that at a restaurant or a bar, or maybe where they're not so non-alcohol friendly, or where you might be able to get a non-alcoholic beer if you can't get a cocktail. So it has really been a lot of fun just seeing how the sober half lives in New Orleans for the most part.
And just like you said, doing it from the journalist perspective, you're not doing it in a passive way. You're being very exploratory with it, and you're seeking out these and finding these new finds that can really help the rest of us as well. So what was the catalyst for each of y'all to do the Alcohol Free for 40?
Well, for me, this is the first time I've done the alcohol free for 40. It's a mouthful. I've always wanted to, because every year I feel like we ramp up during the holidays, Christmas followed by New Year's, and then Carnival is right behind it. And you always get that feeling around Lent that, this is now a time to make a change.
Right?
Yeah. Spring's coming. We need to do something a little bit different. And for some reason this year, I just felt like, let's do it. And I think I was inspired by you, really, but just like, let's do it. We can do it together.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And then how did y'all, and Melanie, this is your second time doing it.
This is my second time. I did it when you first launched the program.
Our very first year.
2016. And it was an interesting experiment for me. After having lived in New Orleans for a couple of years, and like a lot of people, even just growing up around a lot of alcohol in my family and friends, and I really hadn't ever taken a lot of time off from drinking alcohol since I started drinking it. And from that perspective, it was interesting just to see what my reaction would be when I was not drinking after not really taking time off from it for more than a week or two, when I'd have big projects or something like that. And so this time around, even though I didn't see a lot of changes when I did it in 2016, I really thought I would never do it again, just not because I found it that difficult, but I didn't see a lot of changes. So I was kind of a little meh about it, if you will. And this time around, I am actually seeing some changes, which I know we'll get to. But I decided to try it again because I was already doing the Noom app to encourage a little bit of healthier eating on my end, or I guess more portion control. I had been having some issues with that. I had trained for a half marathon and actually gained weight for that experience.
Which is not uncommon. You're not alone. Yeah.
So I'm just trying to get back to some normal eating habits that don't involve training and fuel and all of that good stuff.
Also hard in New Orleans with, the portions are very generous and very delicious. So you want to try all of the things.
And I think it's key what you said, that you were already had your head in the right place when it came to the food that you were putting into your body. And so then post Mardi Gras, post indulgence, okay, you go back to those healthy eating behaviors, and now you're layering in the alcohol free for 40 part. Because a lot of times, one of the things I found, this is our 5th year doing it. And, in years 2 and 3, people, as they were coming in for their post challenge metrics, it was like full confession, and they were eating more ice cream. They had all these replacers they were doing, and especially sugar. And so that's when, last year we kind of introduced the concept of alcohol free for 40 2.0. Also, cut out your white carbs, limit your sugar and stuff. We made less of a production about that this year because we were expanding it into all these regions across the state. So I thought, let's keep our messaging simple. We're just going to talk about alcohol, but still kind of on the side, encouraging people, don't let food get away from you, giving up one vice for another, basically. So I know it's hard to remember back into 2016, but I wonder if maybe your food had not been cleaned up as much there.
I definitely was not eating as nutritiously and healthily as I am now. I really amped up my nutrition and my fitness over the past couple of years. Again, after having lived in New Orleans for a few years, I realized that something had to give. I couldn't just eat everything in front of me like I had been doing, which is really fun.
And tell us where you're from before here.
I'm originally from Kentucky, and then I had been living in Texas for about 12 years, which Tex-Mex has its own dangers. But yeah, I mean, once I moved to New Orleans, all bets were off, and my pants are not fitting.
You're like, there's no way to get around it. Yeah. It's putting it out there.
So for me, cleaning up my diet over the past couple of years and amping up my fitness has been something I've put a lot of focus on. And I've definitely seen a lot of great results. And I feel like the alcohol-free for 40 challenge came around this time again with very good timing for me. And I think I'm seeing much different results because I have changed other behaviors prior to the challenge as opposed to before when I really didn't change anything. I didn't increase my level of fitness. I didn't change my eating at all. I literally just omitted alcohol from the equation.
And one of the big things that we talk about with the alcohol free for 40 challenge to anyone who's, signing up or wherever you are, whether in New Orleans or across the country or outside of the country, is what are those replacement behaviors you're going to do instead of alcohol? And so I think even if someone's not a big exerciser, even adding in a daily walk in the evenings at that time that you would usually have that cocktail. So yes, it becomes that replacement behavior instead of alcohol. But if we can make sure those replacement behaviors can also, as best possible, help us get moving more, get that exercise in more, or it might be trying out a new recipe that's a healthier recipe, like looking for replacement behaviors that are going to up our game in other areas of health also. I also like that you kind of referred to it as taking a break from drinking, that she hadn't taken a break from drinking in like what might be decades, for the song.
Easily.
I think a lot of people, when they hear that, people will say, well, gosh, does that, because a lot of people, I had one lady, she was like in her 60s, and she emailed me on like day 6 of alcohol free for 40 challenge. And she says, I can't believe I've gone 6 days. I haven't gone more than 6 days without drinking since I was 16. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow. And other people may hear that and say, this woman has a drinking problem. Mm-hmm. But in so many cultures, drinking is just so much part of the norm.
True. And I think too, even in Kentucky growing up, I came from a family that really enjoyed its booze. It was something that was at every celebratory occasion on my Catholic side of the family in particular. Everyone in that area is Scots, Irish, and German. And so needless to say, beer was a big part of that culture and still is. There are breweries everywhere in Northern Kentucky where I grew up. And I think, New Orleans is very similar. And I think pockets of pretty much everywhere around the United States, you could probably find a similar attitude where even when we were younger, my dad didn't care if we had a sip of his beer when we were out putting in the hay or working tobacco. Right. It was hot outside, right, and he had cold beer. I mean, we didn't sit there and drink a 6-pack, but we could have a drink of it, or we could have a beverage at a family, function. So whereas I wasn't obviously drinking daily when I was a child or even as a teen or even as a college student, it was always around. And I think taking time off like that, I had a good example. My grandpa used to take a week or two off. He'd say he's going on the wagon and he just wouldn't drink for a week. So it was no big deal, but it's not something I think we all think about if it's pervasive. And it doesn't make everyone an alcoholic that doesn't take a day off from drinking, but I really like the exercise of stopping for any period of time.
Yeah. And I think that I'm 47, and I know growing up in the 80s and 90s, our rebellion was drinking. That was how we, smoke cigarettes and drink Boone's Farm or whatever you can get your hands on. I find that
Boone's Farm.
flashback. I have 2 teenage boys right now, and they are not showing any interest in alcohol. They have other things that they've talked about. I can hear them talking with their friends. But for us growing up in the 80s and 90s, I know that alcohol was kind of like, it was widely accepted. Our parents drank. It was just kind of what you did to celebrate, and I think that learning or relearning ways to celebrate or relax at the end of the day has been kind of a relief.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
We were both very much looking forward to stopping and putting on the brakes.
Yeah.
And you do have to be creative with it.
Right.
And when you go to certain places, I thought it was interesting. Someone brought up, they said specifically when they're going out to eat at restaurants, they're choosing new restaurants that they had not been to before. Because if they went to places that they typically went and their habit was to have XYZ drink, it was more tempting. It was more of a challenge for them to go to that place, sit down, and now order a non-alcohol something to drink. And so, but trying out a new restaurant, they didn't have that prior experience kind of embedded already. So.
Well, and I think the habitual is so much a part of it. And I think you actually spoke about that in the first episode where you were discussing, first episode of the challenge where you were discussing with the doctors and the substance abuse counselors, the fact that the effects of alcohol on your body are probably a lot more wide-reaching. I'm sorry, my mouth is not working, and I haven't even been drinking than we believe, or than we think. And the research is really starting to show that. And you were saying that in terms of habit, you found it very challenging to make that pause and order whatever non-alcoholic beverage you ordered the first day you went out when you performed the experiment on yourself a few years ago, instead of ordering that bottle or that glass of wine, bottle to share.
And I think that's why it hit me so much when the person said that. I thought, because I had sat maybe in that same chair at that restaurant and ordered, wine and this, and it was a very familiar experience at that time. Whereas had I put myself in a new place that I hadn't been, it may not have felt quite such a challenge. So I thought I had never thought of that, but forming these new patterns of ways that we're entertaining ourselves without alcohol. Mm-hmm. What did friends, family, coworkers, except for the 2 of y'all, because y'all are coworkers, but friends, family, people in your life, what did they say when you say you're doing this? Are they eye roll? Were they supportive?
Well, I have a friend group. We all march together in a crew for Mardi Gras, and they were on the same page. They were like, that sounds amazing, and I'm going to do it with you. We have a text group that we keep up, so we kind of monitor each other, like, how'd you do this week?
That's a great idea.
Yeah, and just checking in. A couple of them had planned days that they were going to have feast days, so to speak, and they said in advance, we're having a feast day today. I'm limiting to 2 beers, say. And then they checked back in and said, that's what I did. I said I was going to have 2 beers, and that's what I did. And I feel fine about it and getting back on track tomorrow.
Which is still such an accomplishment compared to how it would have been before.
Right. I encouraged a lot of people to download the Try Dry app, which is put out by Alcohol Change UK, which is a nonprofit organization out of England. And it monitors, you can set up a streak. So 20-day streak, 40-day, 60-day. And so they all downloaded that app, and you can check in each day. Did I stay dry, or was it a planned day? If it was a planned day, how many drinks did we have? So I was surprised that my friends all jumped on board, but I was so excited that we could all do it together.
It makes it easier.
Yes.
On my end, everyone messed with me and said, I thought you said you were never doing this again. And I said, never say never. But they were all a little surprised that I was doing it again because, again, I really hadn't seen a lot of results the last time around. And I didn't find it that difficult the last time around. So I knew from the start that it probably wouldn't be psychologically challenging because I kind of already had some strategies that I had used last time, and I knew that I navigated it with relative ease before. I would say that everyone has been overwhelmingly positive, and I've had quite a few friends that decided to do it as well, and several of them have fallen off the wagon. But they have done it with a lot of humor and grace, and they, I think, decided, okay, this may not have been great timing for me, or had whatever going on in their lives to where they weren't able to maybe do it as long as they had hoped, but they either have cut down considerably, at least, even though they're still drinking a little, or they jumped back on the wagon. So I have a friend who says he has kind of one hand on the wagon still. He's jogging beside it. So
some days he's jogging beside the wagon with that one hand. Other days he's getting like dragged along the ground on the wagon.
But for the most part, it has been really positive, and everyone is being very supportive. And I'm getting a lot of text messages from friends who are doing it. And they're asking either for some strategies that I'm using or some recipes that I've shared on Facebook a little bit, or social media and Instagram. But, delving deeper for replacements for those. So I think they're enthusiastic too, but they're also, some of them, really looking forward to Easter.
And with the people who, one of my friends, her husband was like, yeah, I'm in. Like, but, well, he wasn't that eager. Okay. He was like, okay, I'm in. And then it was day one.
Oh, no.
He had no hands on the wagon.
Oh.
Yeah. And he had, an event happen when it was stressful, and it had him in in a different city that he wasn't expecting. And he said, okay, I broke. And she said, okay. And I thought this was a good response on her part. Well, we need to explore why. And it wasn't that big of a stressful event. It was a flight delay that ended up meaning an extra night in a different town.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the end of the world.
Yeah.
Actually, I think he even made it. He didn't have to spend the whole night. But anyway, it was travel,
that is
experience.
stressful.
And she said, this is the first day though. And we need to explore that this, why is this your instant reaction when you feel stressed,
right,
that you on for the first day, did this. And so I thought that was a wise thing for her to have that conversation of not chastising, but exploring, what's going on here, that
right,
this is our, we need to maybe talk about other ways to manage when we have a stressful reaction.
Well, and I think too, and this sort of goes back to breaking the habits, when you're used to going to a certain restaurant or a certain bar and having this ritual that you perform there that involves ordering a drink and drinking a drink. For me, travel-wise, the last time I had to travel out of town for a friend's going away party. And it was a very short flight from New Orleans to Houston. And I realized that not the party itself or anything leading up to that, but getting on a plane and not having a cocktail was hard for me, because I really, really love to fly. And I really love to have that drink in the airport or that drink on the plane. It's just part of my travel ritual. And to not have it really sort of bummed me out. However, I was able to get the guy at the Chili's in the New Orleans airport to make a lovely mocktail for me.
You were probably the first.
I may have been the first.
Yes.
So I do think that when it comes to our rituals or responses that we normally have, that presents the toughest challenge.
And that's an instance that probably you didn't anticipate until it hit you right when you're in it.
Nope.
We're thinking, okay, what am I going to do with the girls' night out? Or what am I going to do at this restaurant or this party or this bar? We're not thinking about what am I going to do on my way there. We forget about that part because it's so ingrained.
Exactly.
What about the experience you've had so far, just in general, but from y'all's blog posts, what's some of the feedback y'all have had from readers? And also, I just want to talk about your experiences. I mean, like that, hear more.
What have you been hearing? I've been hearing just overwhelmingly glowing responses, like just very positive and thank you for this. And, for me, having a deadline is a big part of our jobs. And so treating this challenge almost like a deadline that I have to meet has helped me a lot. So showing up on the page, showing up for our readers, showing up for my friends, that's really kept me going when it was a stressful day. Gosh, it would be so easy to pour a glass of wine and just kind of have that, deflation at the end of the day. But I know in the end, that's not going to help me and it's not going to further the challenge. So showing up on the page for the readers has been a big part of it for me. And I hope people get something out of it too.
For a lot of people, having some level of accountability is key when we're making any change, life change, and having accountability with someone that you're checking in with, or you share, one of the first things we say when you have a big goal, of course, is share it with the people closest to you. So you do have that accountability. Y'all's is a very public accountability because you are posting this blog. And so, I would venture to say most of our listeners are not managing editors of large magazines and they're not having such a public forum, but they still can have a public forum. And it depends on how they feel about it. But another way to have to achieve the same benefit that Ashley just said of having that deadline and having that accountability is, if someone is comfortable even sharing their mocktail of the day on social or sharing whatever their tip of the day was, and letting their friends on social media know, hey, I'm doing this. I'm going to take you on this journey with me. You don't have to be the managing editor of a magazine, and you can still have that same accountability. Or like you said earlier, the text threads with your friends, that's kind of the same thing. You post a picture of, right now as we're doing this podcast, we're all drinking Topo Chico. You take a picture of that as you're out, or your Big Easy Bucha or whatever, and you text it to all your friends. We can still kind of find ways that we have that accountability.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the feedback for me from readers has stemmed from my social media posts about it, because obviously we share a lot of what we write on social media. And then if we're working on a big project, we'll show that project developing. And I've been sharing a lot on social, as I mentioned before, about the challenge. And it has been really fun to hear back from readers and to actually also gain some new readers or social media followers due to the hashtags that I'm using. The sober curious movement is really big in the UK because, again, that's where Dry January began. And they sort of are the front runners of that. But we also have that movement happening here in the States. And I've been gaining a few of those folks too. And of course, they're pretty far flung. They're not New Orleans specific in terms of audience. And they've been very positive too. And people are asking me for reviews when I publish a mocktail or talk about using Seedlip, for example, which is something I tried recently, and it's a 0 proof cocktail mixer. It's distilled. It's a very interesting beverage, and I'm really enjoying testing it. But I posted a photo of it and said I would be testing it, and I had probably 5 or 6 people reach out to me and say, well, what did you think? What is your review? And so, obviously I then posted to social because people were asking.
Which is, they're like, okay, you test it out.
Right.
You take that step.
Right.
Let's talk about, I want to hear some of the hardest parts, the easiest parts, but on the note of Seedlip, let's talk about some of your favorite mocktail options. And also, I have learned that a lot of people hate the word mocktail. It kind of drives them crazy.
I've heard that too.
And that I've struggled for a really long time until this year was the first year I saw the phrase used, 0 proof cocktails.
Yeah.
They used that the other day when I was at Cure on Ferret, and I asked for a non-alcoholic cocktail. And when she returned, she was putting everyone's drinks down on the table, and she said, and the 0 proof strawberry or what have you.
I like that phrase.
I really like it. I think it sounds
it's more sophisticated.
More sophisticated was the exact word.
Yeah.
It sounds way more sophisticated. And while mocktail doesn't bother me, I really love puns and I love smashing words together. So I'm for it. I am not anti mocktail. I am pro mocktail. However, zero proof just has a really lovely ring to it.
I think so too. It kind of sounds a little bit more like the cool kid.
It does.
Because you're also still using the word cocktail. It's just a zero proof cocktail.
Right.
You're not.
And it indicates something that's maybe more thoughtful, you
True.
know, put together with ingredients and well thought out.
Crafty.
Not just here is some, you know, LaCroix in a glass.
Or worse, juice or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Y'all know Poppy Tooker,
Yes.
our local restaurant and radio personality. She says that she hates the word mocktail because she says, we're not mocking anything about a mocktail.
Oh, that's a
I
good
see.
point.
True.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Leave it to Poppy.
Yes.
Leave it to Poppy. And people in the restaurant and bar industry have passed along. We want to offer, you know, these. We want to be a part of this, but do we have to call it a mocktail on our menu? We're like, no, call it whatever you want. Just don't put alcohol or sugar in it.
Exactly.
And we'll make it our eat fit, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. So some of your favorite replacers, I know one of my go-tos is always kombucha. And of course, our local Big Easy Bucha. The story that I'm about to tell has whiskers because it is one of those, but I think it's absolutely hilarious. But the idea of a replacement beverage, Big Easy always is at our kickoff events and stuff for people to try it. And a lot of people still have never tried kombucha. So it might be the first time they've tried it. So several years ago, they're there and they had all their different varieties out, or some of their different varieties out. And we had this guy, he was then like 83. He had never given up alcohol in his entire life. And he drank a lot of scotch. And he was just came in and my husband was talking to him and he said, well, what are you going to drink instead? And he said, well, I guess just water, you know? And Brad, having heard us talk about this for a while, was like, well, brings him over to the Big Easy table and says, why don't you try one of these? Because water is going to feel really plain and whatever. So the kombucha, this guy then through the rest of the challenge was emailing me with his daily finds. And he went through every variety of Big Easy, found which ones were his favorites. He found other brands of kombucha at the store. So then he became on this whole crusade for finding his favorite. And I'm like, this man is 83 years old.
Wow.
And then he's the one, we call him our 83-year-old Scotch drinker. But he also thought his freezer was broken because the ice maker kept overflowing because he wasn't drinking a Scotch on the rocks.
Oh my
So he was just hilarious. But his wife was like emailing us, like, I'm so proud of him, you know.
Yeah.
But it was like, so the kombucha works well because it's kind of ale-y, it's the fermented, it's carbonated. And so if someone likes beer or even champagne or anything like that, it can kind of have that to it. But there's so many others. So what are some of y'all's favorites that you've found?
Well, I'm already a very big fan of Seedlip. It definitely has that, I guess, flavor and feel of a spirit because it is distilled. And it even has that weird little numbing of the tongue that you
What
get.
is it?
It's all botanicals and it has no sugar, no calories. And it's just distilled botanicals. And their story is that they're using recipes from apothecaries from the 1800s and retooling them, I guess, for a more modern consumer. But they use these very old methods to distill botanicals and fruits. And, it I think lends itself to a lot more complexity and a complexity that you would find in a fine spirit as opposed to when you're simply mixing together, for example, simple syrup with macerated fruits or, some carbonated soda water or what have you, which I love those too. And they're incredibly refreshing.
But it doesn't have that same something that a cocktail has.
It doesn't. And I think it's just those extra little flavors and,
Yes.
and the feeling when you're actually sipping it. I really hate the word I'm about to say, and I apologize, but the mouthfeel.
Yeah.
It's distinct when you're drinking a spirit as opposed to something that doesn't have anything distilled in it.
Absolutely. I've been drawn to Shrubs. I'm also a big kombucha fan. So those are easy ways to get a tasty beverage. I have one waiting for me for after work today.
Tell us about the Shrubs.
Shrubs.
A lot of people are not familiar with that. I just learned about it a couple of years ago.
So it's kind of an old fashioned, and I don't mean the drink old fashioned, but it's an older way of steeping fruit in vinegar. So it has the same bite that a kombucha would have, but you steep it. So it's almost this very rich, like I would do like a raspberry and a vinegar shrub. So you steep the raspberries in the vinegar overnight in the refrigerator, and then you can use that as a kicking off point for a plain Topo Chico, or you can add a sweetener if you like it. I don't like it real sweet.
How much of the shrubs do you add to how much liquid usually?
It's to taste. I like mine pretty tart. So obviously I'm going to add more than everyone else. So just kind of
Do you
mix
muddle the fruit?
Yes.
Okay. And
Yep.
then do you remove the vinegar? Do you remove the fruit from the vinegar or do you keep the vinegar in it?
I keep it all together because I kind of like that, like sort of mix of the fruit and the vinegar. You can strain it and make kind of a solution, like almost like a simple syrup, but it's a vinegar, and then add that. But it's all to taste, and that's kind of what I like, that you can play with it. You can add herbs to it. You can add mint if you
I
want.
think let's add a recipe. If you have a recipe that you like, we
Sure.
can link to that on our podcast episode.
Absolutely.
Or the episode notes, I should say, of this podcast. That because I think that would be a really cool. It's one of those that I see it. I learned about it a few years ago in one of our first alcohol-free for 40s when we as we work with our local restaurants to incorporate zero-proof cocktails onto their menu. And I was like, a what? And they were like, a shrub. I'm like, tell me about this. And of course, the way that a professional bartender makes it and the volume they're making it is very different than we would for home.
Yes.
So it's not something I've ever done at home, but it sounds really fascinating.
Mix it all in a mason jar and just have it in your fridge. And then you can, like when you're ready for one. And I like it because it is more of a recipe. So it takes a couple of days for it to steep in the fridge. So you're crafting something once again in that zero proof cocktail kind of realm.
And if somebody wants something right now that they can put in the Topo Chico, or they can put in, we add it to Big Easy Bucha, is bitters.
I'm a big fan. And that was going to be my very next thing that I said was bitters. And I have a few different types of bitters at home. And I've taken to carrying them in my purse, just a little bottle for when I am somewhere that my only option is soda or a Topo Chico type of beverage. And then I can spice it up a little.
And that's brilliant. And you know what? People roll their eyes about people that tote stuff around in their purse and take it out at the table. But if you're taking out a bottle of bitters, that's kind of cool,
Yeah, totally.
It's not like you're bringing out your bottle of light salad dressing,
Right.
You're bringing out a bottle of bitters. That's cool.
I do run the risk of seeming pretentious, I think. I do that, but I would much rather seem pretentious than not have something fun to drink.
But it's also a nice education point with whoever you're with, because I think that's something that people hear bitters. We know that, or maybe haven't heard about bitters, but if you have heard of bitters, we know that it's something that, higher end bars use, bar chefs, or they'll call them mixologists. So the guys that make guys and girls that make the fancy drinks, they're using bitters, but it might not be something that we're always using when we're at home.
Right.
And especially if you're a wine drinker, you're just pouring that glass of wine. You maybe haven't experimented with that stuff. And so bitters, if you put in the way that we do it with the Big Easy Bucha, if we're out at little events and stuff, having people try it, we take the bottle of Big Easy Bucha, we put half a capful from the bottle of the Big Easy of bitters, pour that into there. And then, so it's basically a teaspoon or so to 16 ounces. And it's not a whole lot. And it makes a big difference. And depending on the bitters, you can even put just a couple of drops. But it takes it from a normal drink to it makes you almost think it has alcohol in it.
It does. And what's interesting about bitters, Mark Bitterman, the very consummate food writer, he has an entire book about bitters. And I really sort of started getting interested around the time his book came out. And there's a world of bitters that none of us probably even know how vast it is. A lot of local restaurants do create their own bitters and bars. So they're making them in-house. You can make bitters. I believe it's a bit of a tedious process. So I don't know if you
more than making your shrub.
True.
I think so.
But there are some great ones on the market, and there are some local makers of bitters. Cocktail and Sons has a wonderful line of some great flavors, and El Guapo is also another local maker. I'm a big fan of just your good old-fashioned Angostura bitters. So there's a lot out there, and that's fun to try in and of itself.
The first year that we did alcohol free for 40, I posted on like a recipe of a mocktail that had bitters in it. And someone informed me that some bitters can have some alcohol. But I thought, well, there's literally 2 drops of it in this drink. It's insignificant. But some brands of bitters also specifically are 0 alcohol. So you can keep an eye out for those. But even if you were doing bitters that had it, you're using such a small amount.
It's minimal.
Yeah.
And when I did the challenge in 2016, I did considerable research on it. And it's really such a small amount. You would have to drink an amount of bitters that would make you ill, not from alcohol, but from drinking that much bitters.
Maybe in year 1, you were the one who told me that it had it in there, because I was proudly like, and you put bitters in this. And then, I don't think it was you, because it was someone that kind of was like, just so you know, it has alcohol in it. You maybe shouldn't be recommending that. So horror. And I looked into it of how much we use. And I said, okay, I'm still comfortable with this.
Well, and NA beers often also have a very, very minimal amount of alcohol in
the non-alcoholic beers. Yeah.
Yes. Sorry. I refer to the NA thing like everyone knows what I'm talking about. And what I have found too in testing some of the non-alcoholic or alcohol removed beverages that are on the market is many of them tend very sweet. I tried the free Chardonnay, alcohol removed Chardonnay last week, and it's a sugar bomb. I'm sorry.
It's free, FRE. Yeah.
FRE. I have tried the sparkling, and I tried that in 2016, and I like that a lot better than the Chardonnay. But the sparkling too, I think, works better as a mixer, and you do not need to put sugar in the cocktail if you're making it with the sparkling free.
They're so sugary anyway.
So sugary. So that's something that I think sometimes you can cut the sugar with a sparkling beverage added to it, or some bitters or some citrus. But at that point you're making a cocktail, so you might as well just do a 0 proof cocktail.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. No, totally. And hopped. Have you tried hopped yet?
I tried it over the weekend. I somehow failed to recognize, or it was not on my radar that they were doing it at NOLA Brewing. And they launched it on Ash Wednesday for people like us who were giving it up for Lent or for the challenge. And it's really good.
And it's HOP''D. And it's a local brewery here, NOLA Brewing. But it's basically a tea that is made with a lot of hops. And I've never tasted anything so hoppy that was not beer.
And I'm not a fan of IPAs, they really do tend to be pretty hoppy on the finish particularly. And it doesn't have that harsh hoppiness to it. I find it pretty mellow. The bartender who was at the brewery that day, she recommended that I mix them half and half together. They have 2 flavors. One is an oolong and the other is a hibiscus. And they were really good mixed together. So I definitely recommend doing it that way, particularly if you might find that one or the other is a little strong.
Mm-hmm.
The combination of them is a lot less sort of present, if you will.
I love that NOLA Brewing probably spent so much time perfecting these 2. And then we're like, mix them up. It's perfect.
The brewery recommended it. So
right.
I have it on good authority. And they do have it in cans for you to take home
that's good.
with you.
I didn't know that.
So I was pleasantly surprised. My husband and I were out on a bike ride, and he wanted to stop at the brewery for a little rest. And I was all for it. I was fine drinking water, which I thought
was going to be your option.
What I would drink. And I was so happy when she said that they had that, and I got to try it.
And when you try it, to me, it tastes again like it contains alcohol, and you kind of have to look again at the can, and you're like, does it? Yeah, and it doesn't.
It really had that something to it, and I think it makes a very nice replacement for alcohol, and it makes you feel not left out.
Yeah, and I think that you bring up a good point. Even in places that you think might not have an option for you, you should always ask.
Always ask.
Because you never know. You are pleasantly surprised. You never know. They may have something, I have just the thing for you.
Well, and you may not know, there may not be anything indicating that they have something non-alcoholic or 0 proof. And what I have discovered, and again, this is from having done this in 2016, is it always pays to ask. And even some of the dive bars, quite frankly, will hook you up with a little something that they want to flex their bartending skills with and make something that you love. And at Cure, it's wonderful. I know I keep bringing them up, and there are so many other restaurants and bars around town that have great mocktail or zero proof menus. And we've actually published some on the blog today. A very handy list was disseminated by press release the other day. And a lot of restaurants around town, if you want to check out the blog, it's myneworleans.com/bon vivant, and just click on the first NOLA mocktails post that you see in the list, and it'll have that in there. But they are really enjoying getting in on this, what now really seems to be a trend of sober curious, or just people who maybe don't want to drink this week because they have a big week at work or a performance, or perhaps they're running a race, whatever it is, and maybe they just don't feel like drinking that night, or they're the designated driver. And they're getting in on this because they understand that there's market for it. And so they want to make their customers happy and offer these alternatives. And I'm finding it even more so now than a few years ago. They're not just on the menus. Sometimes they're not listed. Ask, they'll give you something.
And I'll put the link to that on our episode notes, and then also the specific Eat Fit restaurants. And for our listeners that are not in the New Orleans area, the Eat Fit restaurants that we have, they do span across Louisiana. But for those of y'all not in Louisiana, still take a look at this, because I think it's something that can let you see what's out there and what others are doing. And if you have your favorite places that you go that are restaurants or bars, show them this, hey, could y'all do something like one of these? If one of these like kind of piques your interest or looks good to you, And then what are some tips y'all have for if you are at a place and you feel, and maybe y'all don't feel uncomfortable asking because you're kind of comfortable in what you're doing with this, but some people, if it's their first go at it, or they feel like they don't want to be that person, what are some of your tips for if you are at a bar that seems like everyone's the hip, cool kid there and you don't want to be that guy,
My go-to is just to ask for soda with lime, or soda with bitters and lime, or soda with cranberry juice, or whatever your favorite juice is, particularly, again, at little dive bars or neighborhood bars that may not have an extensive list of options.
And just the tiniest splash of juice gives color and flavor without a bunch of sugar.
And this is something that I think a lot of sober business people do when they have to attend conferences or networking events, or take their clients to boozy lunches, or, and this, again, for anyone in the country, if you've ever had to not drink during something like that, you sort of do feel like the odd man out. And I think bartenders in particular are very sensitive to this, because they've worked with a lot of people over the years that they want to be a little inconspicuous, and they understand, or they may be sober themselves for a variety of reasons. So just ask your bartender, ask your server. You can be discreet if you want to. Those are my go-tos. Ashley, what about you?
100%. I don't know any bartender that wouldn't immediately, discreetly make you a little soda with a little lime or whatever. They know what's up and they've seen everything. So I wouldn't hesitate to just say, hey, soda with lime.
Yep.
And that's all you have to say.
My experience as well. And I think it helps our listeners, because if you haven't done it before, you think you're the only person doing it.
Right.
But you're so not the only person doing it, know?
Not at all. No.
And non-alcoholic beers look just like regular beers when they're in a pint glass. So you can also just ask for a non-alcoholic beer. Most places, if they're not out of stock, which sometimes they are, proving that people are buying them, they will have at least one non-alcoholic beer on hand, particularly during crawfish season, which is a great alternative if you're going to a boil, everyone, or any kind of gathering. NA beer is a great option, and you can just pour it in a glass and no one is the wiser.
Or if you're at an outside event, a red Solo cup.
Yes, definitely.
Instead of having your sparkling water in the can that kind of feels like maybe, or worse, just a bottled water. I think when everybody else is drinking and we just have a plastic bottle of plain water, it just doesn't feel, and then people go, you're not drinking. And then they point it out. If you just have something that even looks remotely like it, no one cares,
Nobody cares. No.
And I do firmly believe that putting whatever your beverage is in the corresponding glass or in a pretty glass, we're supposed to celebrate life. And just because you're not having alcohol doesn't mean you can't celebrate. And I think having pretty things and consuming our food and our beverages in pretty things is probably part of making it more enjoyable.
And I love how you say in corresponding glass, but you're right. If I'm doing that sparkling water at a restaurant, I'll say with a wine glass, no ice, and I don't want ice in it. I wouldn't have ice in that wine in here,
No.
we want it to be this, or, if you're getting club soda with lime to look like a cocktail and they give it to you in that plastic cup with a straw that they're giving everybody with water. No, you can specify, no, I want it in a highball glass. I want it in a rocks glass. What's been the best part for y'all so far? I know that we're only at our halfway point, but what's been the best part y'all have experienced?
For me, it has been sleeping. It has been easier to fall asleep and stay asleep longer. I still wake up in the night occasionally, but then I can go right back asleep. Before I was waking at the witching hour, I call it 3 a.m., and just struggling to fall back asleep. So a longer, more consistent sleep each night, which leads to a better morning, much easier to wake up, a lot more alert, ready to start the day. It's just, it's kind of remarkable, the change of just a solid night's sleep.
The alcohol scientist y'all referenced earlier in the podcast that we had several episodes back, one of the things that he made sure to note is that if someone has been, a consistent habitual drinker, they may struggle for several weeks until they kind of settle into the rhythm because the alcohol had been a sedative to help them fall asleep, yet it was disrupting the sleep pattern. So it was harder for them to stay asleep. So be patient if you have, if you're giving up alcohol and you think I'm supposed to be sleeping better, but I'm laying here and I can't fall right asleep. Your body takes, for some people, a little bit of time to adjust, for others not. But I think that's such a benefit that a lot of people notice is better sleep. What are some other benefits y'all are seeing?
I think just overall alertness. And I don't know if that's specifically connected to the sleep, but just, full of, as soon as I get going in the morning, a list of things I'm ready to do, excited to do, tackle the day, instead of, okay, I need a cup of coffee. Okay, I've got to do this before I can get going. Just kind of ready to go. It's an overall alertness, which has been a big help.
And it can be a combination of the sleep and not having the residual ethanol, right?
On my end, I definitely got that wonderful surge of energy pretty much right away. Within the first few days, and definitely by week 2, I was so energetic, probably to the annoyance of my coworkers and my husband, because I was just this whirlwind of activity. And my house has never been cleaner. I am getting everything done. And it's remarkable and lovely. I like it so much that I'm really considering extending my alcohol-free time limit actually beyond just Easter, because with the Dry January app, which I also have been using, and it has this wonderful little confetti party every day that you click that you stay dry, which I really enjoy because I guess I'm a simple person.
Who doesn't like a party?
I know, right?
We can celebrate.
And so I may do sober spring. I'm still considering it, but
extending.
I may extend it. And the energy has just been something that I feel the running when I was training, I really didn't experience to the level I had hoped at that time. Cutting back my calories has helped and has definitely improved my energy, but nothing to the likes of stopping alcohol 100%. And while I do really love champagne and love to have the occasional cocktail, these benefits are pretty big for me. I think pretty much right away within the first week, noticed my skin was much softer.
I was going to ask that, yeah.
And that was something I noticed the last time around pretty much right away. And it's a very odd sensation, but it's nice because I guess you use less moisturizer and it just feels nice.
I also feel like I spend more time on my personal care routine now that I'm not falling into bed, just drowsy because I had a couple of glasses of wine. I'm spending more time,
Right.
carefully washing my face.
Part of your transition time in the evening too.
Exactly. Spending a little more time on self-care, which has been a really delightful treat for myself.
What about, I know that with your jobs, and y'all mentioned everything is deadline and it feels like there's always 10 deadlines hanging over us. What about y'all's reaction to stress or anxiety provoking situations? Have you noticed a difference there?
I really haven't, but I meditate twice a day and have for years. And I think that definitely helps me with stress in particular. I'm not a really anxious person by nature, I think. Every once in a while, I'll get a little bit anxious, but it's very situational. So I just feel like I'm not really a good gauge of that for the most part. I feel very fortunate because I know a lot of people in my life and loved ones and friends really struggle with anxiety. I don't, but I have a lot of empathy for it. And the times that I do have it, I feel for them exponentially. I think for me, if I were to do the one thing that makes me more anxious than anything on earth, which is driving over the Causeway Bridge, if I'm not anxious doing that, then I'll never drink another drop of alcohol again.
Do you have a drive coming up soon?
I don't, thank God.
I come home, I have 2 teenagers at home. So sometimes coming home can be a little bit stressful. So, but I found it helpful to come home and take a minute and say, Mom's going to be here. Give me a minute. Let me transition from work to home. And they've been so helpful and just supportive and great. And they get it because, they've grown up in New Orleans. This is their hometown. They know what's up. So they're like, give mom a minute. And then everything seems to work out. Pour myself a little kombucha or whatever is the treat of the day. I've also, and this may be a little controversial, but I've been experimenting with CBD gummies. Now, I know the verdict is still out there, but I kind of wanted to try during this period to see if there was any sort of change in how I felt. I don't know if the CBD is actually doing the work or the abstaining from alcohol has done the work.
Or both, right?
Or both together. But I do have a full spectrum CBD, and this is no THC, so there's no high involved with it. But I have found that when I have periods of anxiety, they don't last as long. So it's just a momentary flash of, I'm feeling upset. I can handle this.
But you feel like you're above it, like you're on top of it. It's not getting the best of you and
Correct.
You feel like you're underneath it all.
Not overwhelming. So, and I chose a CBD gummy that has, it's for vegans. So it has a B12. So I kind of feel like this is my vitamin.
Right.
So
one of the zero proof cocktails I forgot to mention earlier is one called Proposition Company. And it was similar to the Seedlip that it's made with a bunch of herbal ingredients, but it also has a hemp extract and a CBD component to that. Mm-hmm. Such a small amount that they said it wouldn't even be like a medicinal amount of CBD in there. But, kind of using I think their tagline is something that includes like chill out or something like that, but chill out naturally. But and the bottles and the packaging is just really cool looking and looks like some old apothecary bottle or some old time liquor bottle, but it's this zero proof cocktail that's also very low in sugar and stuff, but has a CBD. So it can also kind of the same thing, serve a double benefit possibly for people.
There's another soda called Recess. It's a little pricey, but it's also CBD extract in the soda. And I think the calories, like 30 calories for the can, but you treat it like you would prepare a cocktail. So you come home, exact same thing. You pour it into a really nice glass and maybe garnish it with something. And it gives you just that experience of maybe a little boost to your anxiety relief.
There is also one called Ken, which is branding itself as a euphoric. So that's kind of along the same lines. I believe that there are a lot of, particularly the zero proof distillers and makers who are putting these things out on the market that are experimenting with botanicals that are said to promote, different feelings in the body. And obviously chilling out is the one that everybody pretty much wants. There are some bartenders around the country who are infusing their cocktails at their bars in places where it's legal with CBD. And I found one in North Carolina. Actually, I was there in Charlotte for a conference a few months ago, and one of the restaurants we went to had that on the menu, and it was all journalists. And so naturally, we start peppering the poor server with questions, and they say on there, if you want an explainer sheet that tells you all about what levels are in it and what's in it and what it does and yada yada, that you can just request it. And the server said we were the only table that has ever requested it.
How's that possible?
Aren't people curious?
Right.
Don't you want to know?
Guess not.
They just want to chill out. They don't really want to know why.
Yeah.
So we found that very comical. But apparently that's something that maybe some of the listeners either in Charlotte or in other states that are allowing it throughout the country can also experiment with in their no zero proof cocktails.
We actually have a coffee shop here in New Orleans that adds CBD oil to the coffee, which I think that's interesting. It's like coffee to rev you up.
Exactly.
But if you feel like it might be a notch too much, well, we've got your CBD that will add to it, you know?
So the company I get my gummies from sends you a little, I call lanyard, they call a little extra gift. So each time I get because it's a subscription, they have a bottle, like it looks like 24-hour energy shot, but it's caffeine and CBD.
Right.
Called a YOLO shot. I think that's what they call it.
Gosh.
So, yeah.
Now, there's a term.
I don't know how that works. You're right.
Too.
Yes. Yeah, you're okay with mocktail, but YOLO?
No, not good. No.
And it's also how people say it. Well, YOLO.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
For those who are listening that say, what are they saying? You only live once. But that's, you could just say, you only live once.
You can just say that.
It's not that hard.
Right.
It doesn't take that long.
No.
Some of the feedback that our people say, we have our Facebook group, our Alcohol Free for 40 Facebook group, and there's tons and tons, and y'all see it. Just the camaraderie and the social support on there is just really cool. So for any of our listeners, if you're thinking about doing this or you are and you didn't know about this group, join it. And you can just, even if you're doing this months after our official one and months before our next official one, still scroll through and you can see people's comments, their posts. You can learn from it. You can see the accountability that people use it for. But one person's comment on there that I have found to be true is once you are stop drinking, or as Melanie says, taking a break from alcohol, you realize that alcohol is everywhere. And I remember the first year that I did it, I was going to like a gift shop and I was checking out at a gift shop hotel and there was alcohol at the counter right there. Coffee shops here, you can buy alcohol at coffee shops. There's just places that you would think, it's practically like a Hallmark store and they've got booze right there by the register of some sort. And it's so prevalent. And so what are some of y'all's best, and I know y'all shared a lot, but if there's anything we haven't shared, tips for success for people and kind of all these landmines that are around us?
Oh, well, it is everywhere. I know when my kids were younger, even going to kids' birthday parties, parents would say, here's the juice for kids and, alcohol for the parents who are here at this children's birthday party. For us, I just always feel like being honest with people. Hey guys, I'm doing the alcohol-free challenge. Just kind of be upfront with people and just say, thanks so much. I'm doing this. And then, as you mentioned earlier, they ask the question, oh, what's that about?
Right.
Sometimes it starts a conversation. And I think once you start a conversation, people will surprise you with how interested and open they can be about what you're doing. And maybe they want to try it too.
And you're right. It's a point to educate and inspire. And I think a lot of people have a real hard time being open about it though, especially if it's the first time, but realizing that a lot of people, there isn't a reason that we should be not comfortable to open up. And almost always people are they're going to ask questions. They may say they've thought about doing it, or they may share stories of someone else who has, or there's usually some way that you can kind of connect on it. But yeah, kind of just being forthcoming with it. I also think knowing if there's certain places that are temptations to you, you have to avoid. And if, the iced down Carrie Underwood cans of sparkling wine that are at the register at the express line at Whole Foods get you every time, don't go in the express line, go different ways if there's certain things that are kind of triggers for you, like restructure what your behaviors are around that.
I definitely am a huge proponent of strategies. And we did an entire blog post on it in the beginning. And again, having done it before, I knew how important this was. But one of the things that I've been doing beyond carrying bitters in my purse is that when I went to a party a couple of weeks ago, I brought my own mocktail fixins. And I brought the bottle of complimentary Big Easy Bucha that we got at the kickoff event. And I brought some mint that I harvested from my little windowsill herb garden. And I brought some Perrier and some cut up cucumber that I had pre-made into cute little garnishes. And I mixed those up. I was at a friend's house, so I knew that she knew what I was doing and she wouldn't be offended. If you are going to a party where you may not know very many people, it's absolutely okay to contact your host, whether you know them or not, or the organizers of the party. Ask in advance if there will be non-alcoholic choices there, and maybe even ask what they are. And if there isn't something that you think you are able to drink and still stay on the wagon, then ask if it's okay if you bring something. At a friend's house, it was no big deal. And in fact, several of my friends who were also doing the challenge were there, and they were thrilled that I brought something because they were standing around with their sad bottles of water, and I was able to share my mocktails with them.
I saw in your social post about it that you said you wish you would have brought more.
I did. Yeah. I felt so terrible because we ran out pretty quickly.
Which is great.
Yeah. And then also one of the things I've been doing is calling ahead to restaurants or bars to see if they have non-alcoholic options. Particularly, I went to Clessy's, which is a local restaurant that does wonderful crawfish boils throughout the season. And I called ahead to ask if they had non-alcoholic beers on their menu, and they did not. And so I knew going into it that they wouldn't have what I was thinking I would have to drink when I got there. So calling ahead is arming yourself with information. Mm-hmm. And I think even though it's not high stakes for us, we're doing this voluntarily, not because we are in recovery programs, but even for people in recovery, I'm sure that's a strategy that they employ as well. And calling ahead and just knowing what to expect really cuts down on the anxiety that you might experience when you get there and you find out in the moment that they don't have anything. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I don't.
You're paralyzed.
Yeah. So it's just a good way to plan ahead, and planning ahead for any kind of social gathering, bringing stuff with you. Those are going to help you in the long run for the duration.
And then has there been anything that's been just hilarious stories or bizarre things or strange happenings?
I think it has been really funny to see people having not real anxieties, but just yelling via text that, oh my God, I need a drink. I mean, right now we're dealing with the height of the coronavirus situation on the global scale, and everyone's watching way too much news.
None of us gave hugs as we all walked in. We did the elbow bump. Yeah.
I did jazz hands because that has been
your thing.
My new greeting is jazz hands.
We're going to start bowing.
Hey, it works for the Asian folks among us, so why not?
Yep.
So I do feel like there are a lot of stressors, maybe more so at the moment than we're used to dealing with, and not having our usual glass of wine at the end of the day or, nice mimosa at brunch can probably feel like it's exacerbating that situation, or at least not helping. And so my friends have had a lot of humor. I can't think of one major story about that's something weird or funny, but I've been getting a lot of funny texts from people who are just holding on for dear life at this point.
We were talking about him earlier. Y'all know him, but he's a guy that owns a local printing company and does our signage. And he sent me a text message yesterday and I screenshot it. I might share it with our Facebook group, just cutting his name out of it. But he said, how the heck are we supposed to stay #alcohol-free for 40 with all this? And he had SH !T going on. And it was just, I haven't heard from him in weeks. And then all of a sudden out of nowhere, I get this from him. But it was, and I didn't even know he was doing the alcohol-free for 40 challenge. He had done the signage for it. I didn't know he was personally taking it until this text pops up. I'm like, well, I guess he's in as well. And feeling a little stressed right now.
Yeah, I got a text from a friend who was texting from Costco and saying, I don't know if I can handle this. There was madness and no toilet paper and people in the aisles like, what are we doing? Is it, what's happening? And she said, I can do this. I have tennis tonight. I'm going to go win my tennis match. And she did.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So she channeled it.
She's having like the Costco meltdown in the middle of all this havoc that is happening around us. So I think everyone's takeaway, if you're doing the alcohol free for 40 challenge right now and you successfully get through this and navigate it with all this coronavirus going on, you can give yourself like double credit. It's as if you did it for twice as long because it's twice as much happening.
I can get on board with that.
Yes. Yeah, totally. Yes.
And then for those listening now or you're listening and you haven't done it, you're thinking about doing it. This is something that we do every year. It's every Lent, which varies and we centered on Lent because here in New Orleans, it's right after Mardi Gras, but it has nothing to do with if you're Catholic or not or anything like that. It's basically, you can consider it your spring detox. You consider it your post-holiday, cleanse or whatever it is, but we do this every year. So if you want to jump on board with us at any point throughout the year, if you want to wait and do it next year when we're all doing it again, join in. But there's a lot to be said for it, a lot of benefits, and it's a really nice social camaraderie that goes along with it. Any last things for us to add?
Well, you touched on this a little bit, and I really think it is important to reiterate it. I personally believe that there should not be any stigma around addiction whatsoever. I think that as a society, particularly in the United States, we tend to have really unnecessarily harsh feelings toward people who are addicts or are in recovery. And that's why it shouldn't bother us to go into a bar and ask for something non-alcoholic. It's something that I think the bar and restaurant industry is grappling with right now. They're really trying to make sure that their employees are healthy and getting the help that they need if they have an addiction problem. And I think society-wide, we could really take a cue from that and not worry what people think and just go in and ask for that in a beer or mocktail or zero-proof cocktail with confidence and knowing that we're supported and that people aren't going to think badly of us. So it's kind of a soapbox, and I apologize for that.
Well said. Well said.
I 100% agree. And people should know, if you haven't seen it already, but the community vibe that goes along with this has been tremendous. It's so helpful to know there's other people that are going through this too, whether it's a struggle or not a struggle. It's trading recipes, it's sharing stories, and, it kind of feels like you're a part of something that's bigger than just yourself, which has been very rewarding.
It helps us keep perspective.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, awesome, Mel. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. I knew we would have a lot to talk about, a lot to cover, and really insightful stuff, and a lot of very useful strategies for all of us. And again, I will have the links, the websites, the products that we talked about. I'll have all of those in our episode notes. And I will also link to the blog that you guys have done, taking people to the main page so they can see all of it through there, unless there's other links. You guys tell me. So, all right. Thanks so much, y'all.
Thank you.
Thanks
for having us.
Thanks.
A tremendous thank you to Melanie and Ashley for spending their time with us and sharing their insights on how to make it a success to do alcohol-free for 40 also when you're out living your life, and their incredible finds for mocktails or zero-proof cocktails. And again, we will have the links that they mentioned, the products that they mentioned. I'll include those all in the show notes of this episode. I am registered dietitian Molly Kimball, and you've been listening to Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, the podcast. If you would like more Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, please head over to mollykimball.com. And you can follow me, Molly Kimball RD, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you haven't yet, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And join us next week for another dose of Fueled Wellness and Nutrition. Thanks for listening, and stay focused on living your strongest, healthiest life.